All right, here we are, man. Justin, Fabian, how you doing?
Pretty good, Aaron. How are you?
I am doing good. I am sitting in my basement and looking at trail camera pictures of Jim Abbott, thinking about him, and got a drink in my hand here and getting ready to record the first installment of the coffee call, and I'm pretty excited about it. What are you up to?
Well, I'm also in my basement. I just got done watching the Diverge photo judging with all of the photo greats. Seeing some pretty cool content that was submitted on that this year, and I don't know, I just enjoy seeing what everybody's doing. You know, see it all on Instagram, but to see everyone's opinion is kind of what I like to listen to.
For sure, man. It's a pretty cool little contest that they do. So it just kind of keeps everybody that's out there, you know, and it's a good way. It's a good marketing thing, and it's a good way for them to, you know, well, it's a great marketing thing actually, because they're all taking pictures of the Sitka gear and everything, and you know, so it's a really cool idea that they did.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, you know, just to explain real quick to everybody that didn't hear the podcast earlier this week, we are doing a shorter version called the coffee call. And the reason why we call it the coffee call is because for anybody out there who doesn't really know what coffee call is, you know, it's different for some people, but when I grew up, you know, a lot of the hunters, like my dad and all of his friends and everything, they would get together early in the morning before the hunt, and they'd go and get coffee and just talk about the game plan for the day, basically. And that's where all the stories were told and where everybody learned something. And, you know, so I thought it would be pretty fitting to call this the coffee call, since we are taking listener-submitted questions, which we've got a ton of them to cycle through. And thank you to everybody for submitting questions, and we'll be constantly doing it. So if anybody out there has a question, feel free to write on the Fall Podcast, you know, Instagram on a picture or something, or on the Facebook, or even reach out to Justin and I on our personal Facebooks or Instagrams. It's fine. You know, anything, any questions you guys want to know, reach out to us, and we really want to talk about. So the coffee call, that's kind of it in a nutshell. And today we're going to talk about late season tactics. So we are in the late season right now, and we had a couple people write in about wanting to know late season tactics. So I figured, well, we kind of both figured, let's do this because it's relevant. So that sounds good to you. Let's get this thing kicked off.
Yeah, let's do it. I think it's a great first topic. You know, there's so many people that can take away from this, no matter what part of the year you end up calling late season. Like, you know, Texas is just getting rolling right now with their rut. So, you know, and exponentially later, the further south you go. So, I mean, we're ready for muzzleloader season. We're looking at food sources already, but those guys further south are just getting into the prime time. But it all applies at some point, just a matter of where you live. And I think all the same basic principles will apply. So,
right. So let's kick it off here. What do you got? What is your first late season tactic that is? Let's start off with your high priority list. What is your number one late season tactic right now?
I mean, defaulting to my tactics of hunting public ground, I think my priority is looking for hunters right now, trying to find who's actually still hunting, you know, knowing what's been hit already, what kind of pressure the places have had that I'm looking at, I think is the first key. And then from there, seeing what food is still available on those pieces of public ground. So a little bit deeper dynamic for me. You know, it's, you know, generally you just say, where's the food? You know, standing corn, soybeans, turnips, radishes, all that classic late season stuff. I mean, they gotta recoup the energy. They gotta put weight back on, and I don't know. For me, like, I know some of the spots I've been on this year that had commercial ag fields in them, so I got to get out and look for what food is left on these public places, you know, that might not have gotten harvested.
Right. In public land, you might have to get a little creative
Yeah,
because
for sure.
some public land you can't, farmers can't farm that public land. So you might have to you know, look a little deeper. And and it might not be so much food, but it could be thermal cover.
Yep.
Get into the thickness. Like, if you got some cedar thickets or even little swamp thickets that have cedars and, you know, um, the thicker areas basically, get into that thermal cover where it's really thick and the deer can bed down, even pine trees, those kind of thickets and everything. So if you don't have food per se, that like kind of sticks out to you, look for that thermal cover. And one of the biggest things for me is right now the deer are they're not been very far from their food. They don't really want to go that far,
No.
and I mean they could literally I had an instance this weekend and we'll talk more about it on the main show, but I had a buck bedding right next to standing beans and it was 20 degrees out, snow on the ground, and I mean right next to it, he had to get out of his bed, walk 10 yards to get to the beans, eat on beans, walk back to his bed, and he had water right there too. So, that's another thing. Mornings, I mean, hunt them. Like hunting mornings still is a good idea, but I think you're gonna beat deer back to bedding. So if you have a good way to get around, back and kind of get them in the transition area because it's so cold. So I really don't think the deer want to be going back to bedding, so if that makes sense. They are eating all night. They could be, but to beat them back in the mornings, I think it's a little easier if you have a good entrance because, like I said, it's so cold, and I think they're going to want to stay on their feet as long as they can. So you might catch a traveling buck in the daylight, in the morning. And mornings, I know it's hard right now. You've been grinding all season,
Oh
and you just
yeah.
want to sleep in, and it's cold. But
Yep.
get out there. I mean, get out there. Mornings can be good right now. So I guess that would be my two big ones right now.
Yep.
Uh, Also, you know, a front. So right now, it's really cold out, but I had an instance a couple years ago. I was hunting in January in Missouri, and it was really cold for like 6 days. When I mean really cold, I mean like 10 to 15 degrees really cold. And on the seventh day, it moved up to 58 degrees. And it was a huge change. And I'm like, wow, this is weird. Like snow was melting. I wasn't bundled up anymore. But for some reason, the deer, it was a front basically, but it was a kind of like a, I guess you'd call it reverse front in a way. You're looking for that cold going to, or the warm going to cold. This was cold going to warm. The deer got up and moved like crazy, and I killed a really good mature buck that night. I saw like 30 some deer, and they were all moving to the food. They were going to a green source because I would say, cold go to green, or cold when it's really cold go to grain like beans and corn, and when it's warmer go to green. So find yourself a green field. I was on a winter wheat field and the green was popping and they were hitting it like crazy. So that change I thought would have the deer down, but I think it was almost like, like us as humans,
Yeah.
you
Relief.
know with the relief, it's like it's been cold forever now.
Yeah.
Let's get the hell up and let's go move a little bit. I really think it was like that, and that's what got the deer moving, and it was early too. So, have you had any instances like that?
Um. Not so far this year, but I mean, I can think of times in the past where you just get that little break in the weather, like you said, maybe a 5 to maybe even a 10-degree difference. Where the temperature actually is higher than it has been. Um, and not only just the daytime temperatures, but watch the low temperatures too, like the overnights. Like if you're single digits, and then by 9 a.m., if you've got that high pressure, light variable wind speed, they've been out all night, and then that morning rise in temperature is the relief, the same relief that a front would bring. So um, it makes sense.
Yep. And another thing too is their patterns. So I love hunting early and late season, and I think partially to the reason for that is because I'm filming a lot during the rut. Not that I don't like to hunt the rut, but they're kind of getting more on patterns. You can pattern them a little better, so that they're going back to food, and that can make it a little easier. It can make it tough, but it can make it a little easier. Personally, I like sunny day, cold sunny days. I don't
Yeah.
like a lot of cloud cover.
Yep.
When you've got sunny, you got sun popping through and it's cold. that is a trigger that says get the heck out there. You need to be in a stand or in a blind,
Yeah.
and those deer are going to be moving. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I had that same scenario here in Iowa Saturday afternoon. Our second shotgun season just opened, and I mean, I don't know if you consider it late season, but I mean, the weather was exactly that. You know, it was clear blue sky, very light wind, and I just went out for an afternoon hunt. I was on standing beans, but I went out at 1:30, and there was already 7 deer in the field.
Yep.
I was able to shoot one, clear the field, get to where I set up, and I actually shot 3 more. I shot 4 does Saturday afternoon on one bean field.
Yeah, and that was early, right?
Yeah, I mean, I hunted it out to the last light, you know, to the end of legal. But yeah, I got in there at 1:30, and there was already 7 deer in the field.
Yep. Yeah, and that just goes to show you. I mean, it was sunny that day, but it was colder, and they just love to move on that cloud cover. To me, it tends to have them hunker down a little bit
Yeah.
and just wait a little longer. I don't, just in my instances, sunny is good.
Yeah, for sure. And to that point, just relating to some of the higher elevation hunting I had done in New York, up in the Adirondacks, and I think this can be applied to, hunters like in the UP of Michigan or, even in places out west, considering the depth of the snow, those southerly,
Right.
those southerly aspects, your south-facing hillsides, they're going to get sun for more hours of the day, and you're going to have shallower snow on the south side of the mountain. And I mean, that's just one other tactic, if it applies to you, to try to utilize, where those food sources aren't so prevalent. You don't have the luxury of looking for a green field or a grain field. Go to where the snow is not as deep, where the deer are going to be easier, find it easier to move.
Yep.
And I mean, that same principle applies to shed hunting.
Yeah.
Those deer are going to be in the sun. They're going to be on the warm side of the mountain. And 9 times out of 10, it's the south. And it's the same time of the year when they're dropping the antlers. So, I mean, that's a good place to start shed hunting, too.
Right. Yeah, that's a great tactic as well. And also, like I said earlier, we're getting later into the year where, you might start getting a little lackadaisical. I do it. I've been hunting 60 plus days already this year, with filming and hunting myself. And the scent control, make sure you're still on your scent control, and also shooting your bow. You're transitioning into a colder period now, and you might have another layer or 2 on. Start shooting your bow a little bit with gloves on if you haven't, and even with the thicker jacket. And I just can't express enough just to stay on that scent control. I went hunting last weekend, and I got a little thicker bib that I usually wear for predator hunting, for coyote hunting and everything.
Yep.
And it was in my predator bin down in the basement, and I'm like, I should get that stuff out, because I knew I was going to hunt all weekend, and it was going to be 15 to 20 degrees, because I knew that I usually go to those bibs when it's a little colder, and went up there and up to the washer, and I washed them in scent-free soap and put them in the bag and hit them with a little ozone, and just make sure you stay on that, and don't get lackadaisical with your entry and exit also. I mean, it still all applies. It's really easy just to go away from all the stuff that you gear up all year for, so don't get lackadaisical. That's a big one.
Yeah, and I mean, if anything, it's more important now than ever, because the deer are so keyed up to every single thing, that has brought in danger for the last 8 weeks, from scent to sound and access down to like where you park. So, I mean, going in on a morning hunt, if it was single digits, you're walking in on crunchy snow. I mean, it's pretty amazing how loud just a footstep can be when things are that solid.
Yep. And then, Saturday morning, I went out Saturday morning, and I wanted to be sitting in the blind an hour before it even thought about getting daylight. And I try to do that all the time, and it was hard for me to get out of bed. I'm not going to lie. It's like, gosh, I don't want to get out of bed. But Jim's out there, I felt like, and I knew I was getting close to bedding. I was pushing it. I was in a transition area, but I literally was getting 80 yards from where I figured these deer were bedded. And I took my time. I got in there and didn't spook anything and had a good hunt. But that's just one of those things. It's play the wind, keep playing the wind. And I haven't had a gun. So, and a lot of people say, with a gun, you can get away with a little more wind. But, man, always play that wind, especially with your entry and exit.
Yep.
And I'm just coming off. So we just had our regular gun season. Now we're in a muzzleloader season. But the deer have been shot at and have heard gunshots for the last 2 weeks here in Michigan.
Yeah.
So they're, like you said, they're on edge. They're, anything's going to get them probably a little spooky and they're going to hunker down maybe, or you might just blow them out of the section. You don't want to do that. So just stay on top of your game for sure. Because like I said, you spend all year gearing up for the fall and you don't want to blow it, with a lackadaisical, lapse in judgment, know? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, even, I don't know, cocking the hammer on your muzzleloader or taking the safety off, like any of those things that seem so insignificant. I mean, they hear that, and I mean, you can just see them. They become alert instantly.
For sure.
But
yeah, and one of the big things I just did last week was I transitioned my cameras. So, I put them on scrapes coming into the rut, and now I'm transitioning them a lot to food. So I took all my cameras, put them on the bean fields, put them on cornfields, and put them on green because I want to see what deer are going where. So, like, what deer are hitting the green, how many deer are hitting the green, on what nights and temperature. And I like to go back and say, okay, let's say, just for speaking, on the 30th, a lot of the deer were hitting the green and not so many on the beans. Why was that? What was the temperature? What was the pressure? What was the cloud cover? I look at all that, and that's a good way to have those cameras on there. And I try to put them into spots, in Michigan here anyway. I like to because it's high pressure, I like to put them in spots where I can get to them and not really booger a lot because I just feel like you have to be on your game no matter what, no matter where you're at, but especially in high-pressured areas, you have to be 100% of your game. So I like to check my cameras a little bit more in the late season. I tend to do that. And so I like to put them in areas where I'm still getting good intel, but also where I can get in and get out, not being heard or smelled, and not affecting anything. And I don't put a lot of merit on my cameras this year. They do tell me quite a bit, but I also like to drive around. And I like to get those sightings or even be in an observation stand still from afar. Maybe you got a bad wind and you're trying to hunt a food source at night. Maybe taking a step back one night and just kind of looking with the sightings with the binos and everything. I really like to do that as well. But trail cams can be effective for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I know some, maybe more so on private tracts of land. You may see some of those bucks that have disappeared, fall back into their winter range, which may happen to be your property. And, if you're not running those cameras, you're going to miss it. You may not have a reason to go out.
Definitely. And a good scenario I had was, so Jim Abbott, everybody knows about the story of Jim Abbott. He tends to start getting a lot more daylight on camera the last 3 years. So when he was a 2-year-old, he was showing up a lot in December. When he was a 3-year-old, he left during the fall. I didn't see him once during the fall. Had a couple pictures of him, but as it came to December, he was showing up a lot in daylight. This year, he's starting to show up again. And so historic data, I don't know if anybody's got historic data or even believes in that. I'm starting to believe a little more into that. He's starting to get up on his feet, and he's still around. So that's something to look into as well.
Yeah, definitely. I know a couple of guys that killed really big deer this year. One buddy of mine in Wisconsin killed a 206 this year back in October, and it was a deer that he knew was only coming in. Well, I don't want to say was only. The last 2 years, he had this deer on camera only in the month of October, like between the 21st and 25th, and he killed him on the 24th this year. So like that deer had an annual pattern that he was able to apply that historical data to, and finally caught up to him and killed him kill them early.
Yep. Yeah. And another thing I wanted to hit on too, and Casey and I like to do this. So, um, the areas that you don't usually typically go, not, I shouldn't say go in, but I guess I'd be talking about field edges for this. So we like to, as the first snow comes in, and then, you give it a night or a day, and then we like to drive with the electric ranger the borders of the property and really like to see where the deer moving in and out, like not two sets of tracks. We're talking about trails. I mean trails where there's multiple deer, 6, 7, 8 deer, or more.
Yep.
And then we'll flag them, and that's a good key to possibly next year, or where these deer are moving that time of year, or it could even be like, hey, I've been overlooking this area and there's a hell of a runway right here, and they might even use it in the fall months, like October, November as well. So that's something to key on as well, just like a little hack, maybe get in there and things that you might have overlooked, but you see a lot of deer movement coming in and out of food source and bedding, throw a little tape in the tree right next to it or something, and then you got yourself a little marker to, for upcoming years and everything to see where the deer are moving.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something that if you own the land you're hunting on, if it's a home farm or whatever, that's something that you can actually create going into the spring. If you frost seed like native grasses or like a CRP grass, some kind of mix with like man, I can't even pick one out of my head. Just one of those grass blends, and you put that as close to a food source as you can. That will pay off huge in late season, because like you just said in the beginning of this, like you give those deer a place to hunker down that's real close to a food source, that's great thermal cover. They get to conserve those calories and not expend the energy it takes to travel a half a mile to the cornfield and then have to go back to bedding. You keep them close to it. And then as much as it sucks, like when you're in there hoping for a Hail Mary and you want to pull an all-dayer, you may see that buck get out of that bedding area at 11 in the morning or 1 in the afternoon and just come out, feed for 15, 20 minutes, go back in. He's going to go back in there, chew his cud for a few hours, come back out, get a few more bites. There's nothing real consistent this time of the year, or, in a late season time of the year. And anything you can do to influence that. Personally, that's been something that I've seen pay off huge, is when you can create bedding that's that close to a food source.
Yeah. And, if you have a concentrated bedding area, and this can apply anywhere, state or, public land, state land, or private land, which, I'm thinking of a scenario I have right now on the 1 acre. I like to hunt the 1 acre right now with a gun because I can sit off. I like to hunt it with a southwest wind, because the bucks will bed in the 1 acre and the food source is to the west of the 1 acre. So they like to get up out of their bed and they'll walk into the standing beans with the wind to their cutting their nose, because before they even walk out into the field, they can check that for any possible does that could come into late heat, and for predators. So that's another good way to think about it too. The wind direction as well. If you have a concentrated bedding area where it's bedding with any thermal cover, that might give you a little upper hand on trying to figure out where to hunt. Maybe it's a ground and pound, you got a fence row and you just want to sit, or on a tree stand or anything. It might be able to, you might be able to pinpoint an area where you like to sit just on the wind direction where you think these deer would be coming from as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you kind of touched on it a minute ago, but your layering system, your clothes, that staying power, the more time you can put in right now in the field, obviously the better chances you're going to have of seeing that buck that you have been after all season. But, we had a guy, Brad Walsh, ask about, what layering system we like to use, specifically base layers, and just, how we dress, especially when we're filming, just because, it's not up to us how long we're out there. It's our hunter, but.
Yep.
My answer to that is you get what you pay for, just like most
Exactly.
things. But
Yep.
don't be afraid to invest in a really good base layer. It's a one-time investment that you have to make in order to give yourself that staying power. Like, I mean, Under Armour makes a really good one. I know it's more expensive. The Cabela's ECW CS stuff is really good. That polar weight.
Yep.
I mean, there's all kinds of arguments against synthetics versus fleece or cotton. I mean, wool, all that stuff. But just a matter of how you hunt, and which one is right for you.
For sure. That's the ability to stay in the tree or the blind longer is key this time of year. So definitely invest in better layering systems, and we'll get into that more in another coffee call because I really like that question, and heck, that might be next week's. But right now we're up on time. I think we want to keep these a little shorter, just little bits of information for you, and hopefully everybody can take a little bit out of this. And Justin, do you have any final thoughts on anything?
No, I know we covered it kind of fast, and there was kind of a lot of stuff there, but hunt bedding areas that are as close to a food source as you can get. Don't be afraid to hunt mornings. I mean, and if you can, stay all day. If you have to run a heater, I don't know about you, but I've never seen any negative effects of having a heater in the blind with you. I mean,
That's actually a good call. We should talk about that real quick. I agree with you. I haven't had any negative effects with a heater. I'll let you kind of take it from there because I kind of interrupted you. So
that's all right.
You take it from there.
Yeah, it's just I've never had a situation where, the deer has busted us or a field has been blown because we had a heater going. I mean, short of starting it, they're virtually silent. And I mean, it's just, if you're not layered up or if you have the ability to hunt in a ground blind, don't be afraid to use a heater.
Yeah, and because you should already be playing the wind anyway. And, the smell of the propane, it is one thing, but I agree. I've never had an issue with, a heater blowing a hunt. And I actually highly recommend it because the longer you can be out there, the better's your odds. And that's a great point. I love blind life with a heater.
Yeah, same here. I love it.
Yep. And actually, Mr. Buddy makes a heater that when you do the pilot and it kind of makes that clicking noise. Well, they make a heater now, and I don't know how long it's been out. I just saw this year. It's actually, you put a AA battery in the button, and it kind of doesn't even make a noise anymore for the pilot, and it lights it instantly.
Oh, nice.
So,
I haven't seen that.
Yeah. Yep. So check out Mr. Buddy, and that is not a plug for a sponsor because they're not a sponsor. So
there you go.
Well, cool. Like I said, everybody, hopefully you took a little, some good bits of information out of this. I know it was quick, but we want to keep these a little shorter and just kind of get right to the point. If you guys have any suggestions or if you have any questions, like I said, reach out, DM us, or even throw it on any Facebook or Instagram post, and we'd be happy to get to the questions. And who knows? I mean, we've got a pretty good flow of questions right now, but it might get to the point where we even do multiple of these, during a week if we have the time to get to them. But right now we're going to stick to one coffee call and then the main show. So yeah, with that, I think I'm good. You good?
Yeah, I'm set.
Cool, man. Well, thanks everybody for listening, and please go to iTunes and leave a rating and leave some feedback because that really helps this podcast go. And we're looking into some Patreon accounts right now because that really helps the podcast run. All the money right now is coming out of pocket, and anything would help. So we're looking into that. We'll let you know We'll let you know when that gets set up and how to do it all. And again, thanks again for the support, and we'll see you next time.